remember hearing him like, Brooke, please talk to me, Brooke. He's not breathing, call the doctor, but they're very calm. I looked down and there was a lump sticking out of me, a whole lump.
To just say, here I am, Father. Use me, no matter what, use me.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I would like to start off this video by saying thank you all so much for the support that I received on Miles' birth story, and I've never had a video grow that quickly or that rapidly, and I'm just praying that it impacted people's lives, or you know, will help someone going through a similar situation, having a premature baby, and just give a different perspective on that experience. So thank you all so much. I'm very excited, and today I'm going to be sharing on a similar topic, and we're going to be talking about my NICU experience after having a child at 32 weeks. But before we get into the video, can you please like and subscribe, because it really helps me out. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers, and it would mean the world to me. Go ahead and do that right now, please. First, let me start off by saying I delivered Miles at UC Medical Center, downtown Cincinnati, and I could not be more thrilled with the experience or care that we received. It was beautiful for what it was. You know, I think obviously my second birth was a more beautiful story, but I could not have received better care or felt more at home than I did in that hospital. And so I just want to thank the doctors and nurses and surgeons and NICU nurses for making that experience such a beautiful one and truly impacting my life. So as I shared in my previous video, I did have my son at 32 weeks, and it was extremely unexpected. It was an emergency C-section, and that was really difficult to cope with, and I just felt like I wasn't very prepared to be a mom. I was planning on going to the States and kind of planning my birth, getting connected with a doctor to deliver Miles, and it just did not work out that way, which all worked out in the end. But as a new mom, a first-time mom, and having a 32-week-old baby, there was just a lot to process through. And so I believe my time in the NICU actually helped me cope with some of those new transitions and just helped me process with the Lord of what in the world just happened. So after my surgery, as I said before, they knocked me out. I was completely blacked out because it was extremely uncomfortable for me, and I was not handling that surgery well. So I don't remember a lot of what happened after surgery, but I have been told that I was saying some pretty outrageous things. Some I cannot share, but when I was on the phone with my husband, my dad tells the story perfectly, that I was completely just out on drugs, and I was just not myself, and I was saying some pretty crazy things. And all while like rubbing my face, because I remember my face was extremely tingly, so that was pretty funny.
They're not going to let you fill out paperwork on those drugs, are they?
I hope not. But after that, I don't know how long. I have no idea, no recollection. But I did end up meeting Miles for the first time in the NICU with my mom, I think. Honestly, it's all like very blurry. But I went in, I just remember thinking he was so small and so beautiful. And it was such a sweet moment getting to experience that with my mom as well. So after having that first encounter with Miles, with my mom, and getting to share that moment with her, I went to recover. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days, and my brother came and visited me once, and my sister came and visited me once, and that's all I remember. So if someone else came in, I don't remember. It was very isolated, and some might say, oh, that sounds so sad, I'm so sorry. I actually am so thankful for that time. It gave me a moment just to focus on myself, FaceTime my husband, go and see my child whenever I wanted, because me, and then I was able to pick one other person that could be permitted to go see Miles in the NICU, so I chose my mom, and nobody else was allowed to see him. So I didn't have a lot of visitors, my brother and sister, and you know, I'm not even certain if my sister came. Yes, she did, because she brought me a big bag of things. My brother and his wife came, and then a separate time my sister came to visit, and I'm so thankful for that support. But I remember when my sister came in, she was like, the TV wasn't on, I was sitting there, and she was like, what are you, like, do you want the TV on? What are you doing? I'm like, no, I'm just super content being here with the Lord. And I remember just laying in bed, resting, sleeping, ordering food. And despite what people say, I actually really liked hospital food. I don't know. I don't know if it was just, I just came out of Haiti and I didn't have many options here except for rice and beans. But I feel like I was just living my best life in that hospital and having room service and helping me recover. That's what I remember. I remember just having freedom, the freedom of schedule. I really enjoyed those 3 days. I remember they were thinking about discharging me at 2 days, and I was like, no, please, 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 just keep me another day. And where I was a C-section, they ended up doing that, and it gave me more time with my son. I really do. I remember looking back on those 3 days and having no bad experience. Not crying. I was strong. I was having a beautiful perspective on the whole situation, and it gave me a chance to process with the Lord everything that just occurred. And I'm so thankful for that time, and I'm thankful that I got to see my son whenever I wanted. And it was, you know, the nurses would wheel me down, and it was a beautiful experience. I do remember one specific thing about my recovery was every time they had to come in and check the scar, and I think push down on my stomach. Every time they checked my scar, I could not look at it. I don't think I looked at my scar for a solid week, maybe 2 weeks, because for me, that was the most traumatic part. Like, remembering their hands inside of me and remembering that feeling and not being able to cope well with that. And so I chose not to look at my scar. I would use the restroom, and I just would not look at my scar. I was like, no, thank you. I have no desire to look at that thing. And whenever they check, I would turn my head. So that was something very challenging for me to get over and past. And after everything was healed and said and done, my scar hurt for 2 years. My scar did not stop hurting until after I had my second child. So I don't know the biology behind all of that, but I did not have a good experience with my scar and the pain. And even during my period, I experienced extreme discomfort in my scar. Even during my second birth, I felt a lot of pressure in that area. So I'm thankful that that's all done. I haven't even thought about my scar since I had my second son. I don't feel it. I don't know. It's just there. And it's only about that big. It's nothing crazy. Probably that big. But it's nothing crazy, and it's beautiful. They did a very straight line, and unfortunately mine bubbled a little bit, and I've been told I can do some massages on that, but I don't, because I don't really like touching it. But they also said I could have cosmetic surgery if I wanted that to be fixed. I don't really care. My husband doesn't care, so it's fine. After being discharged from the hospital, that's when it was really hard on me. I'm just gonna be honest. Up until this moment, I was really strong. I was taking on the perspective that God got me through this. He is amazing. I conquered that. The hardest thing I thought I could possibly go through, I conquered it, and he was with me, and I was having a fantastic perspective. People were asking how I was. I felt so strong. I am so thankful for that. And I remember telling my dad during the healing experience, I was like, I just, the enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy, but my God brought life, and he is amazing, and he's all powerful, and I feel like David up against Goliath, like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Who is this? Who is Satan trying to bring these attacks on me and my family? I serve a God who brings life. And that's the perspective I had up until this point. I was discharged from the hospital, and that night was the hardest night of my life. Being separated from my husband, not having him to comfort me, hold me. I went to an empty bed all by myself, and not having my new son. So for the last 8 months, he was with me. He was in my belly. And that attachment is so powerful. And then not to have that, and him be in a hospital bed, and being, I think UC is like 30-40 minutes from my parents' house. So my newborn son being 40 minutes from me, my husband being in a different country without me, and me just laying in that bed all alone. That's when things start to hit. I really struggled. I was on the phone with my husband, and I lost it. I just remember like blacking out in my emotions. And I just started crying and sobbing and wailing, and he's on the other end, not able to do anything. And then I put the phone down, and I remember hearing him like, Brooke, please talk to me, Brooke. And I'm not doing well. And so he ended up hanging up and calling my dad. And my dad came into the room, and what I'm about to share, people can perceive the wrong way. But I want to tell you, me and my dad have the best relationship. Like, if he could have been my maid of honor or my man of honor, I don't even know what you want to call it, my wedding, I would have made him that, because my dad and I are best friends. He is my best friend, other than my husband. And I remember him coming into the room, and he knows me so well, and I respond well to, let's get up. Come on, we gotta do what we gotta do. Even though that has not been my first thought, I respond well to it. And he came into my room, and he's like, all right, what's going on? And allowed me to like just freak out. And he was like, what happened? Where's my warrior daughter? Where's my daughter who said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Where is she? What happened to the girl who, so he's, and I know people are going to take that the wrong way, because me sharing my story, people have already taken that the wrong way. Like, someone was like, I would have punched him in the face. Like, let me cry. And in that moment, everything was brought back to perspective. I was like back aligned in my strength in the Lord. Not that it's not okay to cry, but getting consumed in your situation, in that darkness, in that heaviness, in that depression, in that anxiety, in that fear, in that loneliness, that's very different versus just laying in the Father's arms. Allowing the enemy to consume you versus saying, Father, I have no strength. Here I am. I surrender. I cannot carry it anymore. To me, that's very different. And what I was doing, I was laying in that darkness. And so my dad came in and combated it with the light. And in that moment, right whenever he started to remind me of everything that God had just brought us out of and provided a way, something switched. And I was like, all right, you're right. And I gained my perspective back. And I believe that and one other time with one of my best friends, in the next 3 or 4 months that I was separated from my husband, I believe that was one of 2 times that I cried. And I'll get into that in the next video, because I'm not saying that it was healthy not to cry. I just knew in that moment I had to be strong for myself and for my son. And then whenever I was reunited with my husband, I remember that night, after 3 months, I was finally safe to cry and be weak. So we'll get into all that. I know people are gonna be like, just hear me out, okay? After that breakdown, the next day I went to the NICU. I went to visit my son. Someone drove me, and I walked from the drop-off door all the way to the NICU after just having surgery 4 days ago. And I remember the nurses telling me, you have to walk. The people who do not walk and do not get up and move are the ones who heal slowly, or things can go south. But what they've seen is the ones who get up and move, not go on a run, but just move, they're the ones who heal the fastest. And I'm telling you, it worked for me. I don't know about anyone else, but I remember that first day walking to the NICU, I was a mess. I'm walking, and it's a very, very long walk. And at one point I had to hold on to the wall. There's like a railing on the wall. And I had to sit there and just catch my breath, because I was struggling. It was not good. I was weak. I had no strength. I was alone. But I made it. I made it to the NICU. And from then on, Miles was in the NICU for 2 weeks. I had the best experience. I know it sounds kind of funny, especially compared to my other birth story. But for what it was, I genuinely had the best experience. I had the best nurses. They were caring. I would walk into the NICU, and right off the bat, they knew our story. They knew what God had brought us through. Miles was a bit of a superstar there, and I loved it. It was an opportunity to talk about God and what He had brought us through, and sit there and pray with my son for 2 weeks and just heal. Just have a time to sit in a chair, loving on my baby, no distractions, nobody around us except for our nurses, who, if I said, hey, I need time, they wouldn't get offended. It was beautiful. I'm so thankful for that time. I cannot imagine the moms who have C-sections and have to bring a baby home. I cannot fathom it, because my body was so weak, so struggling, not doing well, and having people around while trying to get to know my baby, and I can't fathom it. I loved my NICU experience. I would spend all day, every day in that NICU for the next 2 weeks, loving on my son, praying over him, singing to him, reading to him, journaling, processing with the Lord. It was wild. And it was just amazing. And what the NICU nurses do is unimaginable. I would be sitting there with my son, and even to think what other moms go through is unimaginable. There were some babies there, so small, so delicate. So you walk into the NICU, and it's like the control center, and then like pods full of babies, like pods. Here's pod A, and in that pod there's probably 20 babies, if not more. And then pod B, pod C, the whole control center was like surrounded by pods. And there were babies in there so fragile, so delicate. And the nurses would just take every situation that came their way. I remember sitting there with Miles, and babies would be coding. Or I remember one time, this baby across from Miles' bed, the nurses are talking, and all of a sudden I hear, he's not breathing, call the doctor, but they're very calm. Very, very, very calm. And this baby's not breathing for a while. And they got him back. And they were all so calm, like, wow, you know, that was crazy. I'm so glad that we were able to, everything worked out well. And just hearing those situations just was mind-boggling. And I don't think people understand what NICU nurses do. Even compared to like labor and delivery nurses, in my opinion, NICU nurses are the best of the best. And they don't receive enough recognition because not enough people understand what they have to go through. And so just seeing that strength in them encouraged me as a mom. And I remember telling someone, they were like, isn't it so hard being separated from your son right now? And I know I sound like a crazy person, but I said, no, I'm so thankful that I have 2 weeks to, or I didn't know it was going to be 2 weeks, it was supposed to be 3 or 4. But I'm so glad that I have this time to heal while knowing my son is in the best hands other than my own possible. And knowing that he's receiving the best of the best care and I'm able to come home and just heal. I had a friend who also had a C-section shortly after my own. The healing season was extremely difficult with a newborn. And not a lot of people understand that. I don't even understand that because, like I said, for the next 2 weeks while I healed, someone was taking care of my child. So I am thankful for that time. And no, it was not traumatic on me being separated from him. It had its pros and cons. I did not, the biggest stress for me was my milk never came in, and I worked so hard on it for it to come in. And I think being separated from Miles and having an emergency C-section and the trauma that came along with that, and being separated from my husband emotionally, all of the above, my milk did not come in. And I think being separated from my son played a role in that.
So, just want to come on here and make a quick video. Just to be honest. Last night I was just feeling really down. Like my milk supply is not, well, I mean it's coming in, but especially because Miles was like premature and I had to get a C-section, like, I don't know, just started like kind of wearing on me, because watching him like be so little and suffering and struggling, I was just like, I wish my body could do more for him. So I was really struggling with that last night and keeping my head up. But then this morning the lactation consultant came in and she helped me figure some things out. And I got the most milk I've ever gotten, which is just so incredible. Like, I meant to take a picture of it, but then I just sent it away. Because that moment for me was like, I want to remember this moment, because I felt like so defeated. I felt so overwhelmed, like Satan was just like, you're not enough, like you can't even provide what your son needs, and really just like working hard to get into my head, and just pushing through the perspective of like trusting the Lord and knowing that he's going to provide in his timing and provide what my son needs. And then today is just such a victory. Like, first thing this morning, the lactation doctor came in and then helped me, and then I got like probably like that much milk, but it was definitely monumental. And I just don't want to forget this moment and this feeling of feeling like it's hard. It's really hard, especially whenever you see your son suffering and so little and like so vulnerable to the world, and just knowing that like sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. So it's a big moment. And then now today I'm gonna go down there and I'm going to try breastfeeding him. I'm really excited. So hopefully today will be better than yesterday.
So the nurses and the lactation consultant did everything in their power. I literally had this little thing that Miles would sleep with. and I would take home with me, so my smell would be on it and his smell would be on it, and it's supposed to encourage your milk to come in. So that is a whole video in itself, and that was definitely the hardest thing for me as a new mom, because in your head you have this vision of what you want and what you expect, and for me, I wanted so badly to nurse my son, and it did not work out. So not even that I couldn't nurse him, it's just there was no milk. He did great. He did excellent with his, what's it called, his latch, and yeah, it wasn't him, it was just my body could not produce. And yes, I tried everything, so if you have some comments to make, go ahead, but I probably tried it. So one story that I would love to share with you guys is one day I was sitting in the NICU with Miles, and I was there for hours and hours and hours, and it was just a lot to use the restroom. To go pee, you had to leave the pod, leave the control center, and sanitize and go pee and like put him down. It's a lot. Something that sounds so simple, it's not. So I just held my pee and I sat there. I didn't eat or drink. I just held him for hours all day. Probably also affected my lactation, now that I'm thinking about it. That's probably a big factor. So one day I'm sitting there and I get up to go pee, and the nurse came over to get him, and whenever I got up, I looked down and there was a lump sticking out of me, a whole lump, like huge. And my face just, I looked at my nurse and I was like, can you come feel this, please? And she felt it, and I was like, that's not normal, is it? And she's like, no, let's take you down to the nurse's station to go get checked. And she's like, I'll walk down with you. Let's make sure everything's okay. And I am just a mess. I'm all alone. And it was so scary. And we're walking down to the nurse's station, and she was like, do you need a hug? Because I was like just white. Like I was so scared, and I'm crying. And I was like, yes, please. And I just remember being in the hallway with her and embracing her. And it was so tender and so loving. And those are the moments that set those nurses apart. You know, asking your patient, do you need a hug? Knowing that they're really facing something so challenging and scary and all alone. And so to hug me in that moment meant the world. It was like a reset. And so I went down to the nurse's station, and it turned out to be my bladder, because my bladder was full, and I was extremely malnourished when I came to the States, and I was extremely skinny, and so my bladder was full, and it was higher because of, you know, being pregnant, and it was sticking out of me. So after I peed, it went away. But the whole experience was so cool. I'm going to insert a video here of why it was so incredible.
So I'm currently laying in a hospital bed because I was having pain in my incision, and earlier this morning, and headache and blurred vision. So then I was just in the NICU, and when I stood up, I just felt this hard lump sticking out of my body. Come to find out, it's my bladder. Anyway, I came to triage, and there was this lady. She was trying to get my veins, and she couldn't get them because I have really flat veins, but she tried and tried and tried. And then she said, let's call Bob. And I had just told her that I'm a missionary, and she was like, yeah, Bob actually does missions, and he actually does missions in Haiti and in the Philippines, and he does a lot. And I said, huh, sounds like this might be a divine appointment for me to meet Bob. And when he walked in, I said, hey, Bob. And I said, I heard you do missions. I think that the Lord wanted us to meet. So, I don't know. I feel it in my spirit that this was a divine appointment for me to meet this doctor. And I don't know what God's going to do, but I feel like this was a moment where I needed to meet him. And I wanted to video record it because I don't know. I just feel it in my spirit that this is something that the Lord had arranged. So that is what it's like being like sold out to the Father and saying, here's my body, here's my life, use it for your will. And sometimes that looks like really scary, and at times you actually have to be in really bad positions, really scary situations. Anyway, sometimes we have to be willing to be in the uncomfortable, the unknown, and saying like, Father, use me no matter what that looks like. And sometimes, like a couple years ago, I think 2 years ago, I was hospitalized for 5 days, and then the Lord healed me on the 5th day. And I believe I literally was hospitalized just to meet the nurses and just to show them the Lord and just so the doctors could see a move of God and see me be healed. Was that comfortable? No, it was not. Was it ideal? No. But sometimes the Lord's will is, no, not sometimes, the Lord's will is so perfect, and even though us as humans can't understand it, it's so rewarding to just say, here I am, Father. Use me, no matter what, use me. And going through this journey with Miles and him coming premature, the Lord told me everything was going to be okay, but before that, I had to tell him, no matter what it looks like, even if I were to lose my child, have your will, Father, use me.
So that was my NICU experience. It was beautifully chaotic in a season that was very, very, very purposeful. After 2 weeks of being in the NICU, Miles was discharged. He would have been 34 weeks gestation, his gestational age. And I believe they have to keep him till 35 weeks. But every morning when the doctors would make the rounds, he came out so strong that by 34 weeks, they told me, why are we keeping this kid? And it was just the 35-week mark that they were trying to get to, but he didn't need it, and I'm so thankful. After 2 weeks in the NICU, he was discharged, and I can't say enough good things about my experience, about my nurses, about my doctors, about that hospital. It definitely was not the most ideal of the circumstances, but God was there, and He allowed me to share my story and my circumstances with many, many, many people and impact so many lives. I am a firm believer that sometimes as His disciples and as His children, we are put in those situations where Satan meant to kill, steal, and destroy our life, but God uses them if we allow Him. If you step back and say, okay, Father, I'm in this really bad situation, but who can I impact in this season? And He uses us to impact so many lives. And a lot of people get caught up on, why would such a loving God do this for His glory? I think there's a much bigger picture here. And it's about souls. And it's about a loving Father who doesn't want His children to perish. And that is Satan's goal. So if we can step back and say, okay, Father, I'm in this really bad situation, and I want to use it for your glory, who can I impact? It's about their souls. It's not about bringing glory to this God who's sitting on a throne that once glory brought back to Him. It's about the lives that are going to potentially be lost. And so in that moment, I had the perspective of, okay, I'm in this hospital for 2 weeks, and I get to touch lives here that I would have no access to. The nurses, the doctors, the patients' parents, the front desk worker, the patients that are mourning, suffering in this hospital, I have direct access to them for 2 weeks. So I'm going to use it to impact their lives. And that's what the Lord allowed me to do. All while healing. All while He's not just like, okay, focus on them. No, I had time. I had time to heal with Him. I had time to be with my son and be set apart. He knew exactly what I needed. And that time in the NICU, being set apart for 2 weeks, like shut off from the outside world, was exactly what I needed. So it was a truly beautiful experience, and I love this part of my story. Next video I'm going to be sharing about being separated from my husband for 3 months, and that season was not easy as well, but God was there. So I look forward to sharing that part of my journey as well. I hope you all enjoyed this video and it impacts you in some way to live a radical life. We love you. Oh, say hello. Say hello. Hello. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope it encourages or inspires you to live a radical life. Be a blessing to others. I love you, appreciate the support and the prayers as we're walking through a difficult time here. So, all right, be blessed and be a blessing. Goodbye.